an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, season 2-ish, I don't know, it doesn't matter, episodes 92 and 93. In these episodes, we get to see what Crocodile can do. Rad, extremely wild, and feels very OP. And we also find out that there's like a magical rain powder, which Luffy doesn't understand, and probably neither would I. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Bernadette for commissioning this episode. So, you guys, I don't know what it was about these episodes that I enjoyed so much, but for some reason, they just fucking tickled me. I think what is going on is something that has happened when I've, watched Avatar, Last Airbender, when anytime that you are watching a show that has a fun ensemble cast that you've really gotten to know over time, and the whole show tends to be extremely plot driven, all the time, when your little crew of pals finally have a chance to kick back and just be who they are in a more relaxed setting, it just is so much fun to watch, This is, those of you who watch Game of Thrones, the final season has one good episode, and it's the episode where everybody is chilling and drinking in Winterfell before the battle begins, because there's nothing to do yet. And it's just really fun to just see everybody chatting in a way that reveals more of their personality, because sometimes they're not really allowed to within the script, or you get to see interactions between characters that don't often talk to one another, things like that. And I just fucking live for that shit. This is what I always like, is character stuff. So these two episodes are really fun because the weirdness of everybody comes out in a way that you don't always get to see. And combined with that, now that I'm watching it dubbed, I feel like it works so much better for me. And I got to just really soak it in more than normal. Also, I have to mention, guys, now that I mentioned the dub thing, I have, when I watch on my computer while I'm recording, I put the subtitles on, even when it's dub, so that I can read what somebody's line is while I'm recording to you guys. And I don't think I did this the first time I watched dubbed, but the subtitles were still on as my settings when I watched this time. Those subtitles, which are also in English, do not match at all what the voice actors are actually saying. At all. I don't know if the subtitles, they just took whatever was in the 4Kids version and they have kept that as the subtitles, and they only changed the actual voice dubs but didn't update the subtitles, because the subtitles are always worse. Every time that I read what the subtitles say, they just said, it feels a lot more stilted and ridiculous than whatever the character just said. So I just was wondering if you guys knew anything about that, because I didn't actually notice this the first time. And it was there were several different places in which it wasn't even there are a few, most of the time what it is that the line gets across the same general point, but they say it very differently. But sometimes the line was utterly unrelated to what they were actually saying. And it was just a weird thing to hear and watch and be like, is this what it's like for people who speak Spanish to see the way we subtitle a conversation, And they're like, that's not what they said. Sure, fine, you know. But anyway, I just found that to be sort of fascinating because it did not occur to me that they wouldn't match. So I started this episode a little bit confused because we start in Alabasta, I believe, or no, is it Alabasta? It's like a little town, and I can't tell if it's like the town that they go to later. Is this the town that they wind up in the second of the two episodes? Because, you know, there's a point at which a lot of these towns start to look pretty similar, and this feels very desert-like, so I kind of assumed that it was the same place, but I am realizing that I don't know that for sure. So this place is being raided by bad pirates, and they are really gleeful about wreaking havoc here. And then this woman looks up and she sees this guy standing on one of the like domes of a building. There's a very like Moroccan feel to the architecture here and the whole like street market and whatnot. And she says, "Oh, it's Crocodile. He's here to save us." And I was like, "Is he? What's happening?" Because the impression that I have been under was that Crocodile was pretending to be a savior to the people in order to lure them into a false sense of security so that then he could like execute a coup and take over, right? But this looks like he actually did save them. And I'm like, was this staged? Did he like pay these pirates off to come and attack this town so that they'll like, fall even more under his spell when he swoops in and saves them? Or is it that he's actually not as bad a guy as it seems like he is from the outside? I can't, because like we know that he's shady. I mean, the way that everything has been working has been very shady, and we hear him like calling into Mr. 3, and the way like he just orders his execution and has this like dastardly plan. But right here, it all looks like it's exactly what it seems to be. So yeah, and by the way, Crocodile, I don't feel like I noticed this before, but he is pretty wild looking. He has got a giant, what looks like sort of a mink fur coat, or maybe like chinchilla, because it's got those weird stripes in it. We're going to do the fashion corner here, as usual. Huge hook on one hand. And I mean huge in that the base of it is gigantic, to the point where I'm like, did he lose a hand, or does he just have his hand inside the base? Because it's definitely big enough for him to have a whole hand in there. He's got like an orange and black sort of like checkered vest, a purple scarf. His hair is black with like that sort of purple sheen that they give it. And there is a scar running all the way across his face. From like over his nose across the tops of his cheeks. And I'm super curious about that. Honestly, the look that he has is probably the most subdued of anybody that we have met other than like bit characters. He looks like he is imposing because of this huge fur coat and the hook. But otherwise, it's not that nuts. You know what, guys? I was just thinking about how everybody who has been somebody who ate a devil fruit so far, they all have like a costume that sort of relates to the power that they have. But even if it doesn't, it's at least very dramatic. Is Luffy going to ever update his look? Like, I'm just curious to see if Luffy ever is he always going to be the kid that's wearing like jorts? And you guys know the story about jorts, don't you? If you don't, go on to the Twitters and just search jorts. But is that who Luffy's always going to be in the Straw Hat? I'm not mad at the Straw Hat. This is so like integral to his memory and where he's from. If we never lose the Straw Hat, it's not like I'm going to be like, okay, we really need to stop with this. No, that's fine. Keep it forever. But the rest of his look can evolve. And I just wonder if that's going to happen. I mean, these characters have been around for like 20 years almost at this point, right? So maybe. And yeah, like this whole thing with the pirates that he's going up against, the banner of these pirates is like a pig nose with a leaf coming off the top, which was just honestly sort of confusing to me. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to indicate. We've got like the pig-ish, but then if you have a leaf, now I would expect it to be like a curly pig's tail or something. And then, of course, because it's like a pig, we also have to have a very fat man as like the captain, I guess. And yeah, he swoops down here and takes care of these guys in a way that I was not expecting. Excuse me, guys. When I say swoops down, I like literally mean that, by the way. He jumps off of the tower. They come at him, stab him with their swords, and one of them calls him a puppet for the government. And they stab him, and like, again, it says something on the subtitle like, oh, you think you can stand against us? And actually the line is like, oh, does this puppet think he's a real boy kind of thing? You know, it's very, very different. And they stab him. They think they've won. There's a moment of triumph, like, haha, look at this idiot. Long pause. He lifts his hook into the air. And then this like sandstorm begins to gather around them. And I really appreciated that the camera pulled back to show us just how focused the sandstorm is. Because it's not like it doesn't affect the people around them. The trees are bending. People are crouched on the ground covering their heads because they're being whipped by the sand. But within the like confines of this particular cyclone that he has built up, all of the pirates are dead. And I say dead with some confidence, because sometimes it's unclear if they are dead or just sort of taken down for the moment, you know. I think they're dead. And their arms are sticking out in real weird ways that look almost like, I can't tell if it's supposed to be that they're like desiccated, like the sand dried them out, or if that's just the look that it had in that moment. But then here comes another line when I'm gonna listen to this real quick, actually, so that I can get the exact difference in the line. After the sands die down, he says, "I'm a puppet, huh? I don't think so, ignorant pirate." The subtitle says, "I'm a pirate on a different level, you pig." I mean, like, very different, right? It's just, I don't know. "I'm a puppet, huh? I don't think so, ignorant pirate." I like that better. It's just better. It's just a better line. And that's like consistently what's going on. It's always better, whatever they say. And less formal a lot of the time. Like at some point the subtitle says, "Call me what you will." And what the dude says is, "You can call me whatever you want." And I was like, yeah, thank you. Talk like a person, you know, call me what you will. I mean, there are some properties in which that would feel appropriate, but this is not one of them in my opinion. So anyway, I'm not going to keep harping on about that. It's just like, oh, wow. You know what, guys? I'm just realizing that the camera shows the captain's face, and it pretty much does look like he got turned into like a full-blown mummy. I think I missed that right then because I was a little distracted by the difference in the subtitle, and that's my bad. But yeah, he is just gray and his skin is like just sucked into his skull. So at this point, all the townspeople stand up, delighted with the fact that he saved them. And he had said at the start of the scene, I'm just here for this pirate's head. And I guess that can look like he's saving them when that's not really what he's trying to do. But he walks off with a bag that I am assuming has the pirate's head in it. And all of these people seem surprised at the fact that he is leaving so abruptly, even though that's what he pretty much told them he was going to do. And then we have a bunch of people who, like, they start riding up on their horses, and the dude, like, looks up and sees Crocodile walking away and is like, oh, I guess they don't need us. And then we cut from there to the king on his throne, who is Vivi's dad, being told Crocodile already had it taken care of by the time we got there, so they didn't actually really need us. And her dad is basically like, that's fine, as long as the people are okay. It doesn't matter, like, who took care of it. And to a point, that's like an admirable position to take. You want his concern for his people to be his primary focus. But because we know what we know, it feels very... It does... You know what? I'm wondering, because, like, you know, we had the whole thing with Vivi knowing exactly what the fuck they're up to, infiltrating this group of people. I cannot recall if her father is aware of the Baroque works and what their plan is. Is that something that only Vivi has figured out? Or does her dad also know about it and he's trying to, like, do what he can while not stirring up too much trouble head to head? Because he knows that they just have more powerful people on their side than he does. But what this scene does is it establishes what Crocodile's power is, and it shows us Vivi's dad's face, so that later on, when Mr. 2 transforms into her dad, it's much clearer why she is reacting the way that she is. It isn't a complete mystery. Ryan says, I don't think they've said yet, R.E., whether or not her dad knows. Okay. So then we cut back to the ship. And everybody is starting to get pretty excited because the ship, the, like, charts that they're looking at say they are heading straight for Alabasta. And they are on track in a way that I feel like they rarely are in this show. So then we have Sanji being questioned. Or no, Luffy being questioned by Sanji. Guys, this is just the kind of thing that I can't forgive. Sanji, I like you. I like your energy most of the time. You have an admirable desire to do what is right by your people. And your appetite, I get it. You know, I can be this way when I'm on my period. However, sir, there's just a line that you don't cross, R.E., the food supply. And I feel like this is the kind of thing that either you have this sort of weird ingrained awareness or you don't. My mother would say that it's like a past life thing. Like if you starve to death in a past life, you're hyper aware in this life of like how much food you have available, whether you're getting the same amount as other people and things have been divided up fairly. I think it tends to happen more often when you don't quite have enough to go around a lot of the time. And that isn't to say that I ever went hungry as a kid. That's not exactly it. But there was always like just enough for us each to have a serving, and my dad would basically like get double servings. And so I was always extremely aware of the fact that whatever I was eating, this was like all we had. And once I was through with my plate, there were no leftovers. Like, we just didn't really do leftovers in my house very often because we didn't buy in bulk. That stuff wasn't the same as it is today. You couldn't get that sort of thing. Nowadays, when I cook, like those those meal kits that you can get shipped to you from like Blue Apron and stuff. I understand the appeal and why people are drawn to them because it makes it very simple in terms of the recipes all straightened out for you. You have the exact ingredients you need. However, I don't want to cook every day. So when I make something, I make a big fucking batch and I eat that for like 4 days in a row. That's how I will do a bunch of cooking, yes. But then I have like half the week with no cooking. I am not interested. So it wasn't like that as a kid. We had our dinner, it was over, and then if there were snacks, then we would have the snacks. But even we didn't do snacks really. Like, food just felt like it was always, we just didn't really have quite enough, just barely, to make it feel uncomfortable, you know? And I was always aware how expensive certain things were that I really liked. Because like I would go and have lunch at school and bring a bag lunch, and my friends would all have like, you know, bags of chips or like Kudos bars or various things that I never got prepackaged stuff like that because it was expensive. My mother would make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She would make me like, there would be some cookies from when she made them over the weekend. Everything was stuff that she made. Nothing was prepackaged. So because of that, when I would go to friends' houses and they had all of like the goodies, Lunchables weren't a thing yet, but they were once I reached like middle school, and I got very jealous of people who had those, even though they're gross. I would kind of like go nuts on the stuff that it's not even like I wasn't allowed to have it. It was simply like not cost effective. So because of this sort of like awareness as a kid, and because as a girl, it's hammered into your head that you're not supposed to eat more than, you know, more than the bare minimum so that you stay skinny. It's just, I've had a sort of obsession with like serving sizes and fairness on that front forever. And when Owen and I first started dating, the very first time that we actually met in person, he picked me up at the airport at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we went to a IHOP, and I got something, and I don't remember what it was, but he just reached over to my plate with his fork and took like a big chunk to try it. And I had to put down my silverware and be like, okay, look, I know that this isn't a big deal to a lot of people, but I need to tell you right now, never do that again, because I get so irrationally angry. Do not fuck with my food. Don't do it. Don't do it. They're like, people live with roommates who they will package their leftovers and be like excited to come home and eat their leftovers, and they come home and their roommate has eaten it already. Do you know? I would kick a person out of my house. Are you kidding me? No. I can't fathom people who in workplaces, they go into a fridge like they're at home and anything there is an option for them. And they just fucking eat things that are not theirs. And they are taking somebody's meal away. You don't know what kind of money this person has to go get lunch today. You don't know if they're even going to get a break. Maybe they were planning to eat at their desk because they have too much work and they can't leave. You don't know. And you're taking shit. Are you serious? Are you 3 years old? How can you not understand? That is just not okay in any way. And if you listening are a person who has just taken somebody's leftovers, or you've eaten just the last slice of pizza with nobody around to like ask whether or not they're cool with that, or if you have taken something, God forbid, from a work Like, it's one thing if there's like a big container of half and half and you take a couple tablespoons to put into your coffee. I think you should get your own fucking half and half, but that is less of a problem. You know what I'm talking about, though. There are people who will take a whole ass lunchbox, unzip it, and then go rifling through it and take out the thing they want. Literally, I would rather you go to a Target and just shoplift your entire meal than take from a person that you work with. Don't do that. So, if you are somebody listening who does this, I need you to know, I think you are a fucking monster. I think that is not rude isn't even the word. It is just beyond the pale. And if I had like a close friend that I saw doing that, I would literally never look at them the same way again. Absolutely never, ever okay. Just not. So, Luffy is out here eating the whole food supply. He doesn't just take some leftovers. Is there something wrong with him? Like, literally, is it because his stomach is stretchy? Is that kind of like the conceit that we're going with? That like, there's always more room, so he never really feels full? I don't feel like that's explicit, but if that's like the thing that most people go with as like for a headcanon, I am fine with that. It would make sense, honestly. And I would kind of like there to be like an explanation in some ways. If it's just a character thing where he just is ceaselessly hungry, I'm not going to be mad at that. But I do like physically, how is it possible for him to put the sheer volume of food in a stomach that looks like it's like he's so thin, you know? I have to assume it's that his stomach stretches out. I don't know. So yeah, he ate everything that was like required for all 8 people for several days. The whole, and then he has the fucking audacity to like complain when they have to go fishing. Now, what I think should be done, and I am not at all confident this would work, but sometimes you don't want to do something because you think it'll work. You want to do something because you want the satisfaction of having tried this petty little idea you have, right? Like, we've all been there. I want everybody to gather around the table and eat all the food and not let Luffy have any. And I want him to be on the receiving end of that, for it to be burned into his memory forever what it is that he has done to all of them more than once now. Like, he has gone in and eaten all the food. Like, there have been other times, and it wasn't quite as dire because there were places they could stop, or they were like already on an island. But nevertheless, I feel like until he experiences his gnawing hunger and having to just witness everybody else slowly consume every bite, I don't feel like he's ever going to get it. And like I said, I'm not confident that'll help him to get it either. I'm just kind of grasping at whatever ideas I've got. Bernadette says, the audacity to just take stuff off my plate or from my lunch. I have the same anger and it is not irrational. Thank you, Bernadette. Ryan says, it's a pretty common anime cliche that the main character eats a ton for some reason. You know, Ryan, I feel like somebody else said something about this. Maybe it was you in another thread. And I didn't really stop and give that the attention it deserved at the time. But when you say for some reason, that really is the crux of the matter for me. Why? That's a weird thing to just have every main character always starving and eating a ton. Especially considering that, like, as far as I know, main characters in these are not fat almost ever. So you have this, like, weird thing where somebody constantly eats, but they never actually gain weight. It's never... They're like a glutton, but never in the way that's like unacceptable to society kind of glutton, in which I mean, you don't get fat, so it's fine. You know, it's only when it's things like this where you're taking food out of the mouths of other people that it's considered not okay. That's a wild thing. I wonder what that's about. I'd be interested to know if there's just like somebody, like one of the first animes, they did that and everybody just sort of kept that tradition going, or if there is some significance to that in like Japanese culture that they decided to sort of, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm curious about that. But yeah, I forgot how that had been mentioned. So anyway, I'm sorry, guys. I totally went off here, but it's necessary because there is just something in me that reacts and I can't help it. I just get so angry. So yeah, Luffy, he tries to act like he has no idea what it is that Sanji is talking about. Eventually, Sanji like can see the crumbs on his face, and also and I don't think he even has crumbs around his mouth. I think he just says that to trick him. And also, Luffy like burps really loudly. He's just very bad at lying. And I really do enjoy all of these little bits that happen because of this. So we have Sanji talking to Nami and like, hey, can I just get a refrigerator with a lock on it? Genuinely, like you can see that this is a problem. Then we have the fishing later, and I think Sanji comes up and he is, they're saying something about how, oh, well, we really need to catch something for Sanji. And he sees that all of them are chewing on food that they apparently took. And takes their heads, smashes them all together. Even Karoo is fishing with them at this point. But then, a bit later, when Luffy and Usopp are fishing, you see the poles bending. And then Luffy says the fish aren't biting at all. So you're like, why are the poles bending then? What's happening? It turns out that they have Karoo tied up as bait because Luffy even ate all the bait. Ryan says, I don't know why either. My best guess would be like, it's, quote, they eat a lot to have high energy. Bernadette says, I always figured it had to do with their energy expenditure too. Oh, and yeah, there were no crumbs. Sanji just says that. Okay, this is like in Seinfeld where Elaine says, well, Jerry told me that you did. And George freaks out yelling at Jerry, how could you tell her? And he's like, I didn't tell her, you idiot. She tricked you. So Karoo is being used as bait. And I really, truly, guys, I can't. And they, at this point, get distracted by this steam that is rising off of the ocean. This is sort of a weird bit because I feel like it should be more significant. And I don't know if it's just like here for flavor or if there's going to be significance to this and we're just not quite there yet or what's going on. But basically, there are undersea volcanoes that vaporize the water and cause a ton of steam. And as they build over time, they create whole new islands. And the ship eventually passes through this steam, but it's like, is there anything more going on? Because they just sort of complain about the smell of it. And I think that the significance is that it's supposed to be the mix-up from Mr. 2 winding up on their ship. But that's pretty much it, right? So, yeah, and he is not aware of what the steam actually is. So he calls it fog. But eventually, the ship comes out the other side, and for some reason, his chair is empty. It's like he leapt off of the ship in the middle of the sea, and I don't get why. I kept thinking that there was maybe he's on the hook, but how did that, like, is it supposed to be that they, like, passed so close to him that they hooked him right out of his chair? Like, they're not, like, casting. I don't really understand what is supposed to have happened here. I will just be honest. It doesn't matter. Mr. 2 is eventually brought onto their ship, seems utterly bewildered by this whole thing. Oh my God, you guys. I just remembered that the line he says here is, why do I always jump on the first duck I come across? Is that supposed to be the joke that I think it's supposed to be? Is that what they're doing? Did he jump out of his chair onto Karoo because they're making a dick joke? Is that that can't be right. Is that what it is? Is that what it is? All right, you know what? I'm just going to leave that. I'm not touching that. So anyway, this leads to an honestly weirdly delightful little scene where everybody is like, who the hell are you? And they ask, like, why he looks so weird. And he says something about how he has eaten a devil fruit. They never directly ask his name or anything about, like, what his deal is. And this leads to them not finding out until he has made his escape exactly who he is. So they feel like idiots later. But for the moment, we have a kind of fun little bit of him, like, showing off the power that he has. And I don't remember if we have encountered anybody who turned out to be an enemy, but the crew initially liked them. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty much everybody has been an outright enemy right away, been very obviously like a bad person. And I feel like he's the first one where everybody gets along with him and is sort of like delighted by him in a way. And genuinely, like, Usopp is begging him to not leave later on when it's time for him to take off. I kind of enjoy this. I really do. Like, there is something about enemies that in a weird way have like a respect for one another that's always fun to watch. And he has eaten, as it turns out, what he can do is he has eaten the clone fruit. And so he can touch somebody with his right hand and turn into them right down to their voice. And their body, obviously, he has to flash everybody with Nami's body, which I did not appreciate. Listen, can we not? Just don't. But now that I know what his ability is, the choice that they've made in coding him as gay or trans or just queer in general, like, you know, just a vague sort of umbrella term, I get what they were trying to do. But I'm going to guess this is not handled super well. I mean, the duck dick joke, if it is what it sounds like, I feel like we're already not in good territory. But like I said, I do really love seeing everybody be impressed by what he can do. And he goes through all of these different faces from his memory. And that was something that I thought was particularly, like, chilling. Honestly, when you've got somebody who can touch a person and turn into them, almost always the trope is that they have to be in the presence of whomever it is they're copying. They have to actually lay hands on somebody, or, you know, just there is like a time limit, it feels like a lot of the time, to how recently they had to have seen somebody. Sometimes it can be, oh, I'll look at a photo. But the fact that it's just, I met someone one time, and so it's in my memory, That is extremely upsetting for me. That means that there are so many more possibilities open to him than I even thought. What cracks me up is that when they find out that he is Mr. 2, Vivi is like, oh, I just didn't recognize him. And they're like, you didn't recognize him? And she's like, yeah, I've only heard about him from descriptions. And then describes the absolutely insane way that he looks. And everybody's like, how did you not know that was him? I was like, thank you guys. Really, genuinely. Vivi is such a puzzle for me because I go back and forth very much on how much I like her. Like, there have been a few times where I've been like, Vivi for the win. I'm so glad that she's like, you know, becoming more either important or she's more forceful than I expected about certain things. But in these 2 episodes, she feels a little bit like a wet blanket. You know, and I think that is the danger whenever you are going to have one character who genuinely is invested and cares about a thing, and they're surrounded by an ensemble cast who isn't invested in the same way. They're going to be trying desperately to sort of keep everybody on task. And that's not a fun job to have as a character, being the straight man when you're up against one other person. That works much better because the dynamic is that even though you're the straight man, your lines can still be funny. But when you are up against like a whole crew of people who are all being wacky and you have to be the one focused, level-headed one, I feel like that's a lot less forgiving. So I feel like I am having mixed feelings about Vivi, but I don't think that's her fault. Like, I feel like there have been some circumstances where I enjoy her, and is it just because I don't really care about Alabasta? Is that what it is? I don't know. Oh my God. Bernadette says, I hate her so much. She is as dumb as toast. I've never heard of dumb as toast, but that works. I mean, is that what it's supposed to be? Is she supposed to be dumb? Because I was taking it to just be sort of a joke that she didn't immediately know who he was. But if it's supposed to be that that's just her being an idiot, but it can't be that it's just her being an idiot, because they set it up that she's like impressed Dalton, right? With her awareness and foresight and big picture mentality. So that just doesn't feel like it was in character. I don't know. But yeah, so, and the thing with Vivi is, like, I've said this before, how oftentimes when you've got a big cast of a lot of male characters, often the woman character will be the one who is assigned to sort of like be the serious one, you know? And I was sort of excited because even though Nami, to a point, she was playing that role with where I kept saying she's basically the captain, can we all be honest? She still had such a wild thing going on with her like extreme greed that it felt fun, you know? Vivi, it doesn't feel like she's got a lot else going on for her personality wise. And Alabasta, as much as I can sympathize with her not wanting her people to be like tricked into a whole new government, I also don't really know anything about like how her dad rules or what her ideals and objectives are. And there are plenty of people that I have met in my life who seemed to be perfectly nice people in an everyday like interaction. And then when I found out what their politics were, I was absolutely appalled. So I don't see why I should believe that Vivi is going to be better at caring for her people just because she allegedly cares about them. Like, plenty of people care, in quotes, and still suck. Bernadette says, no, she's not. My opinion is probably a quite unpopular one. And dumb as toast is just rough translation from a German saying, being as stupid as bread. I love, especially this particular like idiom, how very specific the things we decide to make into the idiom are. Like for, in English, we've got dumb as a box of rocks, We've got dumb as a post. That's another one. Oh my God, there's a third one. Dumb as a bag of hammers. That's one as well. There's a bunch, and I'm always just like, why is that the thing? You know, it was just a weird. Anyway, so this episode pretty much ends with his departure and them all suddenly realizing who he is. And because he's an enemy, they have figured out a way around his power, so they think, which is basically, we're all going to wear these like friendship bracelets. They're not really. It just looks like they've got a bandage on their arm. Honestly, it looks like the kind of bandage like after you've had a suicide attempt, which made me really uncomfortable to see everybody wearing it. But I was like, I know that's not what they meant. But they are like, if he can change into us, he won't know to do this, because like he could change his face and body, but his clothing remained the same. So he would have to update what he's wearing actually physically, as far as I understand it. Have to actually go change into clothing. I don't know how he gets around that. Like, that feels pretty limiting now that I think about it. Because I was concerned over just being able to summon faces from memory, which is like really quite, that's a lot of power. But if you can't change into somebody complete with an outfit, that will make things harder. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding. Guys can feel free to chime in and tell me if I'm wrong on that. So yeah, they have all of these things around their wrists that they decide are going to be him, like beating him at his own game. So the next episode is them landing on the island, and Nami is like reprimanding everybody to not be assholes and do impulsive shit, but Luffy has already taken off because he is desperately hungry. Here goes another thing, guys. He runs off the ship, and I know that he keeps saying restaurant, but in the subtitles it always says food place, which I don't know. I just love that. What a stupid, why would, okay, sure. So everybody has to either worry about what he's up to, worry about how they're going to find him later, just generally be concerned over the fact that like his photo has been circulated everywhere because there's a bounty on him, and everybody has to band together in sort of like, well, we're going to have to handle all of them, or all of the problems that he's going to bring with them. So Vivi, for her part, is like, I am too recognizable, so I really shouldn't leave the ship. And Sanji offers to go shopping for her as well. And then later on, we see what he bought her and Nami. Basically, he buys them belly dancer outfits, which Nami actually seems to like. And that makes sense to me because she's a little bit more fashion forward. But Vivi is just like, dude, you can't just like walk around in this outfit. Like, people wear them. But it feels very much like a Wizard trying to dress up as a muggle kind of moment, and just like grabbing a nightgown and being like, muggles wear them. And it's like, not to the grocery store, you know? And at this point, they spot Mr. Three's ship, and they all had sort of hoped that he was dead. But evidently, he is not only still alive, he is here at the same island. And Usopp says, never mind, I have an idea. And he has them all crouch and cover them with what I guess is a sail, and walk through town like a giant caterpillar with a sail draped over their backs, including Vivi, even though there's really no reason for her to have gotten off the ship. She should have stayed on the ship. It's just like there's no, why risk this at all? And at this point, this is when she's like, at least this town seems like it's doing okay. And I was worried about what I was going to find, but I think I'm still going to be able to make it in time if things haven't progressed as badly as I was fearing that they may have. And it becomes pretty clear that she is planning to go ahead and do all of her plan to stop these guys on her own. To which Nami is like, are you still thinking like that? Really? And I liked that phrasing of just like, I really thought we had gotten past this as buds. Why are you still acting as if, because what Vivi says is essentially, that wasn't in our contract. The deal that we made said that you would get me here, and that was it. And that's what I'm that's how I'm operating. And Nami is like, what? You have to know that by now, that's not how it's going to work anymore. We're doing this with you. Which leads to this whole thing later on where she finally officially asks for their help. And it is played as this moment of oh, she's taking a stand and asking for help. But I was like, I thought we had already agreed that they were going to do this no matter what she tried to say about it. I don't know. So I'm running out of time here. So I am going to jump over to Luffy's story. In his search for a restaurant, he somehow sprinted past every street vendor, every actual restaurant. I don't know how, because he ran down the main drag. I don't get how this could even have happened. And also, he apparently doesn't have any money on him. So what was he gonna do? And he eventually winds up in the desert, and there's just one solitary house. I just get so angry all over again. So what Luffy decides is that I am going to open this random bag that is owned by a stranger, eat whatever is in it, and when it doesn't taste good to me, I will burn it in the oven outside. Truly, what that doesn't even there's all sorts of things something could be that aren't food. What if it's a bunch of cans and you open them and you taste it and it's fucking house paint, and you're like, oh, I guess we'll burn this since it's poison. It's house paint. Just don't eat it and move on to find he thinks it's poison and that he's somehow getting rid of poison that's dangerous to people. There's no logic here at all. None. Zero logic. I appreciate the situation that they are trying to put him in and why this was constructed the way it was to get where we were going, but it feels so contrived that it's almost nothing. And so yes, he burns this big bag full of powder, and there's some guy inside who is listening to Luffy do all of this with a rifle, but is shaking and doesn't want to come outside. And we find out later that this powder is being regulated by the government, and it's technically illegal to have. So I think maybe he was worried Luffy was a cop or something. I don't know. But for some reason, he doesn't come out right away. And it's not until after Luffy has said, oh, I guess I'll throw this poison in the fire, that he eventually comes out. And I was like, dude, you were listening to him eating your property. You really should have made a stand earlier. And all of this powder goes up the chimney and results in this really sudden heavy rainstorm. And this dude comes out asking Luffy where his shit is, and Luffy tells him he burned it. And we have a back and forth that goes on for a little while of Luffy trying to convince him it's not a big deal because it was poison, and this guy trying to explain to Luffy that it's very meaningful and that this is a problem for him. And the way that he says it is something like, this was going to help me fulfill my dream. And that is the one that stops Luffy and makes him go, wait, your dream? And I was just like, you're a weird guy, Luffy. It's like he's got like keywords built in, like the Manchurian Candidate. And nothing will penetrate at all until you finally hit like the right phrasing. And all of a sudden he's like, oh my God. And it's like he temporarily, for just a few minutes, turns into like a sane, rational person. And it does not last. So once he realizes what he did, he's super apologetic, and yet is like, there's nothing I can really do though. Like, I would pay you if I had money, but I don't. And they talk about what this dude like goes after Luffy once he realizes that he spilled the beans on the fact that this is like illegal to have. Luffy sort of gets in his face and says something like, oh, so you're a criminal. And this dude, assuming that Luffy is going to run off and tattle, goes after him with a sword. And we cut away for a bit, but when we come back, he is covered in bruises and bumps and laughing at the fact that Luffy's like fighting style is not what he expected. He explains what the powder does. And I'm assuming that like the government has made the powder illegal because the government is now run by like some corrupt people, and they are trying to force maybe a famine or something to happen. So they're purposely trying to keep the place like in a drought. I might be misreading that. And this dude's plan, I thought he was going to sell the powder. No, what he's going to do is cause rain, gather the rain up, and then sell the water for like really high prices, which is just, I love Luffy being like, wow, you must be really smart. And I'm like, or he's a fucking scumbag. Anyway, so, yeah, he eventually sort of blackmails this dude into, giving him lunch, and in exchange for like not telling anybody about who he is or what he's been up to. And it turns out that he couldn't have turned him in anyway, because he is also a criminal and like wanted. Meanwhile, we have Chopper, and he is not dealing with the heat super well. I actually kind of liked this as a device. He's a reindeer, and he lived on like a fucking snow island, and now we've taken him to the actual desert. This makes sense to me. And he starts to be like, oh my God, I'm woozy. I think I'm going to have heat stroke. And he like lays down in a, like on a wagon. And of course the wagon winds up taking off, and he gets very worried because they keep talking about him like he's going to be dinner. Not assisted, by the way, by Sanji holding up a kebab and being like, it's venison. And I was like, Sanji, what are you doing, man? Come on. And these dudes are clearly rebels. Like, it feels like they are rebels against the Baroque Works guys, but I might be mistaken. And Chopper doesn't seem to be absorbing the like context clues around him here. Because later on, when somebody asks him, like, who were they? He just genuinely is just like, ah. So I have to assume he's going to run across them again, but he has to, like, make his escape while they're unloading, like, all these rifles. And guys, there's this moment as they're, like, pulling up to whatever the headquarters is, where he, like, wakes up and sticks his head out and like makes a noise as he realizes that he's not where he thought he was. And then he like runs to the back of the truck and he like knocks over a bunch of rifles. And this dude like pulls aside the curtain to look in back and be like, what is going on? And the rifles are on the floor. So he assumes, oh, they just fell over. But then the camera like pans and we see Chopper sort of holding himself between like two pallets full of stuff with this like that like screaming face on, but there's no sound. He's not actually screaming. And I don't know why, but that fucking got me. I laughed so loud at that. It was just such a weird, like, you know, that kind of silent scream panic. Yeah, that's familiar. So yeah, he winds up like getting reunited with everybody. It doesn't turn out to be like a terribly big deal, but it gives us an idea that there are some people out here who are not happy with the way the government has been going and are determined to do something about it, legally or not. And then we have the final moment of Vivi being like, I finally must ask for your help in saving Alabasta. And I'm like, Dadoy, we already said that pretty much. And they all like thrust their fists into the air and are like, we're going to go and do this. And there's this long pause and they're like, wait, are we missing someone? And then we cut to Luffy, who is walking through the desert and is eating his lunch and realizes that it's not going to be enough and basically curses the name of the guy who gave him food because he's an ungrateful brat. And that is how it ends. So I am going to wrap, but I really appreciate that you guys all like helping me through this and giving me information as usual. Thank you, Bernadette, again for commissioning this. And I will be seeing you guys again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.